Hello, and welcome to a beginner's guide to networking, or as I like to call it, a practical guide to procuring professional pals. I'm Chrispy,
And I'm Sarah.
and we're here to share our personal experiences with networking, and hopefully give you some tips and tricks that you can take into your own networking. So, firstly, I'll talk a bit about myself. The reason that I care so much about networking and really passionate about it is because networking really is largely responsible for me having my current job. My journey to game development started at Melbourne University, where I was studying psychology and economics. I quickly realized that this wasn't really what I wanted to do, so I dropped out and I did some online courses to learn about Unity and game design. I started at AIE in 2017 and graduated in 2019. And in that time, I was volunteering at industry events, I was attending a bunch of networking events, and at one such event, I met the art director at Playside Studios. Fast forward a year later, one of my classmates, who I had at AIE, she had been working at Playside already for half a year, and an associate producer role opened up. So she referred me internally, and then the art director, Ryan, remembered me and was like, oh yeah, I remember this guy. So he recommended me as well. So sent me my application, went through the whole interview process, and 2 years later, here I am as an associate producer at Playside Studios.
Yeah, so networking actually played a pretty valuable role in my career as well. It didn't necessarily land me the job that I have right now, but it definitely helped me get there. So straight out of high school, I jumped into a bachelor's degree at Swinburne University, graduated in 2019. While I was there, I helped run the game development club as the vice president. I also volunteered at GCAP and PAX multiple years in a row for different groups. And in my final year of uni, my course convener actually recommended me, alongside some other students, for a role at Fellow Traveller as a casual tester. About the same time, somebody that I'd met through networking was able to recommend me for a job at Officeworks. And both these two jobs helped me develop a lot of skills and then helped me land a position at Mighty Kingdom in their graduate program as a QA analyst. I'm still working there today, and I've definitely learnt so many valuable things from all the networking and extra stuff I did along the way.
So before we get started into the meat of this presentation, I wanted to talk about a few things. This presentation is largely going to focus on our personal experiences, because unfortunately there really isn't a step-by-step formula or a handbook where if you do these things in this order, you will land a job. Networking is also no substitute for actually being good at your job. You just need to be good at what you do. Networking can help you get there, though, for sure. And on that similar note as well, networking isn't necessary to get jobs either. You can definitely just apply for jobs and go through that process. But networking is definitely a way to make that process smoother and maybe give yourself more opportunities. I also won't lie and sugarcoat this, but a lot of getting into the industry, particularly getting your first job in the industry, can come down to luck. And as you know, for me personally, it was luck. The timing worked out that as I was graduating, Playside was looking to hire an associate producer. But networking gives you more opportunities to get lucky, and that's what I find really valuable about it.
Another really important thing to note is that the industry in Australia is really, really diverse. You'll meet lots of different kinds of people, of different backgrounds, ages, genders, and identities. It's really important to come in with an open mind and be really respectful of the different kinds of people you're going to meet and interact with. On top of this, it's pretty common for a lot of us to have social anxiety, especially in big groups of people, and even more so thanks to the pandemic and COVID. So there is no pressure for you to attend in-person events. There's lots of great online communities that you can join and start networking there before you get to in-person events.
So, why should you care about networking? Well, there's three main reasons that we see it. The first is to make friends. The second is to help create opportunities. And the third is to learn about the industry.
So, to start with, those friendships that you're making, they definitely are professional, but you also need to be genuine and friendly, and actually you'll probably want to make friends with game developers because we're all really similar and like-minded people. I actually met Chrispy through networking, and we developed a pretty solid friendship just because we were attending a lot of events together. Game developers, they aren't just there to get you a job. They're not just a tool. They are real people. We have real feelings, but it is a two-way street. You're going to get out what you put in, and so be friendly, be mindful, but do be professional as well.
Yeah. I just want to add that definitely don't treat people as job vending machines for sure. People can tell when you're coming into an interaction purely just like, oh, what can I get out of this person? How can they advance my career? It's very obvious. People can tell. Don't do that. And kind of on that note, a lot about networking is focused around positive interactions. You want to make sure that every single interaction that you have with someone, no matter how small, ends up being a positive one. And this can be as simple as a smile and a wave, a nod of acknowledgement when your eyes meet, a thank you. People remember these kind gestures, and even if they forget you and the exact gesture itself and the context, the positive feeling that they had is going to be remembered and associated with you. The industry is pretty small and word can get around really quickly. So if you're positive and kind to people, they will generally be positive and kind back, and word will get around that you're a pleasant person and nice to be around. When you're at a networking event, I want every single person, when they're finished talking to you, to leave and think, wow, yeah, that person was pretty cool. And they were nice and great to talk to.
Yeah, so alongside, interacting with people and being happy and friendly and positive, just being at events or being active in communities can go a long way. I personally attended 13 monthly meetups in a row, which is too many, and you probably don't need to do that. But it did help me, become a familiar, friendly face at those meetings, which meant that, people were more likely to come up to me and chat to me because they remember me from last time, or they'd see me around a few times and were thinking, oh, this person's interesting, they've been here a lot, I should go talk to them. Same thing in online communities. I'm personally not super active online, but in your Discords, in your Facebook groups, posting regularly, again, happy, friendly, positive stuff can go a long way.
So I want to talk about patience, because networking is a long game. You're going to meet a lot of people as you network, and generally nothing will come of it immediately. And it can take you a while before you notice anything substantial actually come out of your networking attempts. But I don't want you to be discouraged if you find that happening, because it's a lot like planting a seed. It's not going to flower immediately. There have been many times where I bumped into someone once or twice at just various events, but we never really properly spoke until a few months down the line when we saw each other at another, completely different event. It's important that you continue to nurture your relationships and your network and don't rush into things. You want to keep those relationships watered so that eventually they're going to bear fruit for you.
So one of the major things that I actually got out of networking was knowledge. I was able to learn and grow my understanding of the industry just by reading what people had to say, listening to people talk, meeting the kinds of people that I'd be working with one day, the different personalities, communication styles. It helped me develop a lot of really valuable soft skills. On top of this, it also helped me figure out what I wanted to do in the industry. I changed my mind a lot with the different roles that I wanted to work on, but hearing from people what the jobs were actually like and talking to them about the stuff that I enjoy doing really helped me a lot. On top of this, these communities, you'll often see a lot of different opportunities and jobs posts posted in the groups, which you can use. Even if you're not going to apply for the job or the job isn't super relevant to you, you can still read and learn. What are people looking for in certain roles? How are people phrasing certain things? Even sometimes a software might be mentioned in a job ad that you hadn't thought of looking into before, and you go and look into it, and maybe it's actually going to be really useful for the kind of work that you want to do one day. So on top of this, in addition to this foundation, you also, you're going to start going to events, and there are lots of different events that you can go to, and we're going to give you some practical advice on how to approach these events. The first thing is presentation. You want to make a good first impression at your first event or when you're interacting with someone for the first time. This doesn't mean you have to dress up all fancy and look pretty. A t-shirt and jeans is totally acceptable in the games industry. I found even wearing like an interesting nerd t-shirt has actually been a good icebreaker, because maybe somebody's also interested in that TV show or movie and will come up and start talking to you. Of course, you still want to be clean and smell nice and all those basic stuff, but there's no pressure to dress up and look really fancy.
So something I want to talk about that's helped me a lot is the concept of anchors. So anecdotally, when I first started trying to get into the game dev industry, I had a friend, Tim, who was also at a similar point, both interested in game development, and we heard about these networking events and we decided we should go together. It was incredibly scary and daunting going to our first one, We didn't know anybody who was going to be there, and we barely even knew how to get to the bar. We actually got there a little bit early, which did end up working in our favor, and I can recommend that, because when you get there, there's hardly anyone, so it's really easy to strike up and start a conversation compared to getting to an event, late, where conversations are, fully underway, and it can be a little more daunting to try and insert yourself into a conversation, especially if you don't actually know anyone yet. So when we got to this event, and when we went to multiple networking events, we established a system that initially we did by accident, where once we got there, we would just split up and we would go talk to as many different people as we could. And eventually, sometimes we'd be feeling feeling a little overwhelmed, or I'd feel like, oh, I want to go talk to a familiar face now. So I would go find Tim. And sometimes we would just have a little break and just have a chat with just us two. Or Tim, would introduce me to whoever it was that he was talking to, and vice versa if Tim came over to me. We found that this system worked really well. If you set down an anchor, your friends, you can feel more confident and more comfortable going out into uncharted waters and putting yourself out there and meeting new people when you know that you have a safe place and a safe haven to retreat back to when you're feeling a bit overwhelmed.
And out of a lot of, when Chris and I were working on this presentation together, this term really stood out to me because I'd sort of done it by accident. The first few networking events I went to, I happened to go with a friend of mine because he invited me along to go with him. And having that familiar face, that person that you can come back to, it really does help. It makes it a whole lot stressful. And having that support person, that anchor, is really good.
So let's talk about a few practical tips for networking. So first up, be respectful, friendly, and positive. Like I mentioned earlier, this kind of goes without saying. Just be a good person. As a student coming to these events, I'd encourage people to talk less and listen more. Be an active listener, be engaged with what the person you're speaking to is saying. Odds are, they've probably been in the industry for a while and they have some knowledge to share, and people will love you and respect you and really appreciate you actively engaging with what they're saying and listening to them. I would also say to avoid introducing yourself as a student. Focus on what it is that you do. Right? You're a game developer. You're an artist. You're a coder. You're a designer. Definitely don't shy away from telling people that you're a student. Definitely let people know, if they ask what you're doing right now, you can say I'm currently studying design and production at AIE. But don't start the conversation around the fact that you're a student. Don't frame that and don't define that as who you are. And lastly, this kind of relates to the anchors a little bit, but I would avoid going to events in large groups and just staying together as a large group for the entire event. Definitely safety in numbers. You can feel more comfortable when you have a lot of people with you, but I find that it can make you very hard to approach, actually, because you can imagine me as an individual coming to a networking event, seeing a big group of 5 people who know each other really well, or 5 students, just chatting. It can be hard and daunting to kind of join that conversation. And also, if you move around as a big group of 5 or more people, that's also really intimidating to approach someone and then just have 5 rounds of introductions. I really recommend that you walk around either as a group of 2 or 3 at most. And just split up from your friends and take a chance and then come back to them later. So how do you actually enter a conversation? Well, obviously, introduce yourself. Hi, I'm Chrispy, and it's nice to meet you. Never ever start with business cards. Very impersonal. I've personally found very little value from exchanging business cards. I've mostly done it as a novelty between someone that I've met and really vibed with, and just oh, hey, look at our business cards. There is a time and place for them, but definitely don't start with business cards. If you don't know the person that you're speaking to, just ask them, hey, what is it that you do? Just start the conversation there. It's a good idea. But if you do know them, because odds are there are a lot of people maybe in the industry that oh my gosh, I know that they worked on this particular game that you really like. It is totally okay and encouraged even to acknowledge their work and talk to them about it. But you don't want to geek out and be a bit overbearing about it. Definitely comment, oh, hey, I'm Chrispy. I've seen your work on Twitter, or I love the work that you did on this particular game. I've always wanted to know how you did this, XYZ. There's just a few examples of ways that you can kind of introduce yourself and kind of broach that topic. So how do you exit a convo on the other side of things? Before you finish and leave, definitely feel free to ask them for what socials you can follow them on. It's a good way to keep in touch with them and kind of see what they're working on long term. Don't expect people to follow you back though immediately. Don't stress about it. It's not a big deal. And definitely do not bring it up with them and ask them like, hey, why didn't you follow me back? It's just really awkward. And they have no obligation and no reason to follow you back immediately. Remember what I said about patience. Networking is the long game. If you do need to leave, make sure you know, like, hey, it was really nice talking to you, and I hope you see you around. I have said that verbatim, like, many, many times. And also feel free, after the networking event, to reach out within the week and let them know that, hey, like, you had a good interaction, and it was great to meet them, for sure. Oh, no, I forgot their name. Don't worry. This happens all the time. It happens to everyone, and I promise you that no one is going to get offended that you forgot their name. A quick tip on this, I find that once you've done your introductions, just repeating their name back to them in a sentence can really help. So I say, like, oh, hi, I'm Chrispy. Nice to meet you. Oh, Sarah. Well, it's nice to meet you, Sarah. No. That can help cement their name in your brain. If you did forget their name, also just be honest. Just come clean and say, like, hey, I'm totally sorry. I forgot your name. But another thing related to that is that if you can remember the context when you met them or the last thing that you did with them, then you should mention that. So, for example, oh, sorry, I totally forgot your name, but I remember I met you last month and we had a great chat about X, Y, and Z. People understand that names can be hard to remember, but if you can remember the positive interaction that you had with them, it shows that, you know, even if you don't remember their name, you remember the person, and they will definitely appreciate that.
And personally, as someone who is terrible with names, I've never really had anybody get offended if I've forgotten their name. I'll just be really honest and frank about it and say, hey, I forgot your name, I'm so sorry, I'm just really bad at remembering names. And most of the time, the person is either so chill about it or has also forgotten my name, and it's something we can just kind of smile and laugh about and reintroduce ourselves and move on really comfortably.
So let's talk about alcohol. This is a bit of a serious topic because obviously there's a strong drinking culture in Australia generally, and games is no exception to that. Lots of networking events are run at bars, so you're going to be around alcohol at these events. It's definitely okay to have a drink or two, but you have to know your limits because this is first and foremost a professional thing. It's a professional event, and you're going out in a professional capacity. You don't want to make a fool of yourself. You definitely don't want to be known as, you know, that person, you know, or like, you know, that Chrispy. Last event, you know, it was a bit off his head. No one is going to pressure you to drink, I promise you that. And if someone is, then they're probably not someone that you really want to talk to anyway. If you do want something in your hands to kind of sip on, because it can be a good way to kind of pad time by taking a sip or just like keeping your hands busy, then any drink, you know, even non-alcoholic drinks, of course, will help. So highly recommend that.
So another big part of the games industry is social media, whether it's Twitter, Discord, Facebook. We use them a lot to follow each other, communicate, and learn about the industry. We've got some general do's and don'ts you probably want to follow, especially if you're on Twitter or Discord for the first time. Post your own work. If you've got something you're really proud of or something that maybe you want a little bit of feedback on, post it. There's often Screenshot Saturday posts in most of the Facebook groups, and a lot of Discord servers will have a share your work channel where you can share your work and kind of talk about it and often get feedback. Follow other game developers. Personally, on my Twitter feed is mostly other game devs, a lot of QA game devs, because a lot of them do tweet really relevant stuff. They're showing off their work, and you know, commenting and replying to some of those messages and some of those posts can be really good as well. Especially if you have something really positive to say, you want to contribute to a conversation, you're more than welcome to do that. Support other devs and your peers on social in these communities, whether it's somebody more senior than you or somebody directly across from you. Supporting another person like you is good. People will appreciate it, and it's a good sign and a positive thing to do. And on top of that, stay positive, be really friendly, be really respectful. Number one thing you can do. There are some don'ts as well, of course. Avoid DMing people without asking first, and them saying yes, or without it being explicitly, in their Twitter bio or something they've said publicly before. People just don't like getting DMs out of the blue if it's not something that they're open to. Try to avoid being overly negative on social media. I know it can be hard. They are often pretty negative platforms, especially Twitter a lot of the time. Avoid hot takes, even if they're really popular hot takes when you're kind of first starting out on Twitter and social media. It's best just to avoid those in those professional environments. Keep it between you and your friends. Don't be discouraged by low engagement. You probably won't get a lot of comments or responses at first to some of your posts, but if you keep posting semi-regularly, not spamming, but just semi-regularly, eventually you'll get more engagement. And if you're in one of the Facebook groups or Discord servers, try to avoid arguments with the moderators and the admins. They're often volunteers, putting in a lot of hard work to keep the communities up and running. And even if you disagree with them, it's just a lot easier to agree with what they told you to do or change, and just keep things smooth. They are the people that manage these communities, and you want to be seen as a positive person inside those communities. So, speaking of communities and events, I'm going to briefly go through some of the major ones in Australia, primarily the ones that Chrispy and I are in or have attended. Off the top, there is the Game Developers of Australia Discord server, really big server, full of lots of interesting channels, a lot of advice, different topics, showing your work, and a really big community. There's also the Looking for Game Developers Facebook group. It's primarily now for job postings, not really much else, but you can still get a lot from that. Of course, there's Global Game Jam, really awesome event to attend, can help you build your portfolio, and there is a site in pretty much every major city in Australia, so you should be able to go along. We've got the Melbourne group and the Melbourne Monthly Meetup. Chrispy and I actually met at one of those events. There's some similar stuff in Adelaide as well, which I've attended from time to time, including a demo night, which can be pretty good if you've got some work you want to show off and get some feedback on. Even student projects are welcome. There are more groups. Chrispy and I aren't from any of these cities, so we can't really comment on what they're like, but they are the most popular groups and events. We will be also sharing links to these after our presentation, so you'll be able to find them really easily. Now, in terms of events, the biggest one on the calendar every year is Melbourne International Games Week, or MIGWE, or however you want to pronounce the weird acronym. It runs every year in October. Some of the key events are High Score at the start, which is mostly for sound designers and composers and different music game dev people. You've got the big one, which is GCAP, and then the AGDAs, the Australian Game Developers Award, that happens right in the middle. Thursday night is Parallels, which is a really awesome showcase of weird and wonderful indie games and artsy things that people have been working on. And then, of course, PAX at the end, which we all know, mostly for enthusiasts and gamers and people like that. But there's often a huge showcase of local Australian games, so it's pretty cool to check out and see what people have been working on. So, another way to get a lot out of these events is to actually volunteer at them. Both Chrispy and I have volunteered at a whole bunch of different events, and it's, you're not just there to attend, you're actually helping run of it. You get a lot of respect from other people. It also looks pretty good on your resume. So I help run my club. I volunteered at GCAP and at PAX booths as well across a couple of years. I think GCAP in particular was really, really valuable because you also get access to the whole conference, but you do have to put in a solid amount of work. Chrispy volunteered at the other two, so I'll let him talk about them briefly.
Yeah, totally. Free Play is a really solid conference. That one is more focused on the indie side of games, so more artsy, more experimental stuff. Really cool. Great to meet people there. And NZGDC is another option. So obviously this one is a little pricier, and if you're in the position where you can afford to go to New Zealand, then power to you, and I highly recommend NZGDC. I volunteered there 1 year, and yeah, it was just great. New Zealand was great. Conference was great. It was really cool to meet developers from our neighbours across the sea.
And I will also add that there are forms and applications to volunteer at most of these things, especially GCAP, Free Play, and NZGDC. Links for those will be posted on the event's social media, but also in a lot of these groups that we mentioned. So just keep an eye out for them, and definitely apply.
So, we've come towards the end of our presentation. So these are really the major takeaways that we hope that you take away from from this presentation. Approach networking as making friends with cool people, which shouldn't be hard to do because most game devs are genuinely cool people, and you'd love to be their friends anyway. Be patient because networking is a long game. So like a snowball, really hard to roll at first, but once you get some momentum and you get some mass, it gets a lot easier, and you'll find yourself having more and more fun when you go to networking events.
There's lots of awesome, great groups and events to join. Make sure you join the one, especially the ones that's local to your city, and hey, go to your first networking event. On top of this, of course, like we said, pretty much throughout the whole presentation, be kind, friendly, positive, respect each other, respect the people that you're meeting. It goes a long way.
Thank you so much for listening. We hope that you got some value and learned some things from this talk. If we're going to be posting these slides publicly. I'll post them on my Twitter, which you can feel free to follow me on at Chrispy Design. And if you want to DM me to ask me any questions or chat, my DMs are open.
Yeah, again, thanks for listening. Hope you guys got a lot out of this. You can follow me at the Gooflord on Twitter. My DMs aren't open, but you can always tweet at me. I'm happy to respond to any questions anybody has.
Thank you, and enjoy the rest of the conference.
Yeah, see ya.